The next step in optimizing our CSS is we need to deal with the media queries. You can handle media queries a number of ways. You could continue to add some other adjustments in your table of contents. So I might want to come up here and add an area for media queries, just so any user would know where to find the media query rules. And we'll just go ahead and copy one of these. Let's go down to where media queries start. So here's my first media query right here. So I'll just change this to 8, and we'll go ahead and write media queries. Now, you may have some subcategories underneath your media queries if they're more complicated. Our media queries are pretty simple. We only have about 4 rules in this min width 600 media query, and then I only have like 4 rules in my min width 750. So this isn't a lot of stuff that I really have to deal with. I'm just going to kind of organize it so it's a little more reminiscent of what I have appearing above. I'll follow the same convention that we had here, where I'm going to have the global styles appear first, if I have any of those, then header and nav, then main body content, then generic selectors, then footer, and if I need to, I could add some comments there as well. I'm not anticipating needing to add any further comments just because I don't really have that much stuff, but we definitely want to optimize what's going on here. So inside the first media query, you can see that I have an H1, I have nav, and I have column A and column B. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to clean up this H1 media query so that it's on one line. And since we want to have these appearing alphabetically, I'm going to go ahead and place that at the top of my list. I also like to indent the media queries, so you can see that these have not been indented. So I'm going to indent them just so it's clear that they are children of this media query up here. You can see how that's outdented. I just find that that's easier to see. Then I'll go into the media query right here, and before I actually commit to any of these things, I want to make sure that I need these rules at all, because I have a background color of black and I have a text color of this gray appearing on nav. I want to go up to where I have my nav rules, and you can see that I'm already declaring a background color of black, and I'm already declaring this light gray font color. So these are unnecessary. They are redundant. I don't need to declare any rules that I have up here. So I have a text align center. I can start to eliminate any and all of those things. I only want to have rules appearing here that change from what I had before. So the next thing that I would have is font weight and font variant and height. So let me go up above and see, did I declare any of those things here? I have a height, but the height is different. I have a font weight of 700, and we don't have the font variant because we don't need to declare that. So the font weight is slightly heavier. I'll need to keep that. I can get rid of font variant. Height of 3 is different, so we're restyling that, so I'll need to include that. So I'm just going to add those things and move them up a little bit. I can definitely fix the margin so that it is on one line, 8% for the top, 2% for the right. I'm using bottom of 5%, and then left is 2%, and we don't need to write that because it'll just inherit from right here, so we can get rid of these guys. And then we have padding on the top of 5 pixels, padding on the left and right of 10 pixels, and padding on the bottom of 5 pixels. So I'll get rid of that. Make sure that you change your property too if you're altering these. If I left it at padding top but then used shorthand, then this wouldn't work. So let me just verify that my margin and my padding are different. So if we check up top where we first declare these things, here's our margin settings. Those are definitely different, and the padding is different as well. So I do need those rules. So that's going to take care of the nav. We've eliminated a lot of the extra unnecessary styles that we had defined here. Column A, we're going to go ahead and we're going to move the float property to the top, so these are organized alphabetically. Width of 30% is going to be different, and then I have margin of left and right. So let's come up to where we have column A, and margin of left and right are different, and the width is different too. So I need to have all those things. So I'll just go ahead and reduce this down to shorthand notation. So for my column A, I'm going to have margin that is going to be 0 for the top, 2.5% for the right. Let's use 5% on the bottom, and then let's use 5% on the left. The reason I chose to use 5% on the bottom is because I had a 5%, and actually I had 0. Let's use a little bit of margin on the bottom though. I think it's going to look better if we have a little bit of spacing right there. So we'll just go ahead and eliminate that. That takes care of column A. The next rule that we have is going to be column B. So again, I'm going to move the float up to the top. Then the next thing we have is we have background color, we have border, top and bottom, and if we check on column B, background color, border, top and bottom, those are all the same. So those things can just go away. And we're going to go ahead and we need the width declaration, because if we look up here, width declaration is different. My margin settings are probably going to be different here. Yeah, I believe they are, so we'll want to consolidate those. So let's go ahead and let's specify this to be margin, and our margin on the top is going to be 0. On the right it's going to be 5%. On the bottom it is going to be 5%, and on the left it'll be 2.5%. And then we just have a rule for padding on the left of 10 pixels. We'll leave that because that is different from what we have here. These other rules, other than the padding on the left, are going to stay as they are, so it'll just, the padding on the left is going to be overwritten. And then that's the end. Our media query ends right here. So that media query has been cleaned up. I'll come down to this last media query, and there's a couple things that I can do here. First of all, I'm going to declare the H1. Now I have some text that's been commented out. Sometimes you'll see this in CSS files. This usually means that somebody was trying something and then they commented it out because it wasn't working, or maybe they changed their mind. When you're ready to push your site live, you just need to get rid of this stuff. You don't need that there, so we'll just get rid of that. I'm just going to flip-flop my font size and the text align center, and let's just make sure we need those things. So in H1 the font size is different from 2.2, so this is slightly bigger. And then text align center, is that something that we've already declared up here? Text align center, so that's redundant. We don't need that. We don't need to use any rules that are being used elsewhere, so let's just get rid of that. And that means I only have one property on H1, so I can bring that down to one line. I'll indent these just so that they are easier to read and that they show that they're children of the media query. I have H2 with a font size, but it looks like that's been commented out, so I don't need that. I'll just delete that. I have a rule for logo, which is setting the max width. That should come after the H1 right here. And again, one property, so that goes up to one line to make that easier to read. Then I have something called promo. I'm not even using promo on this page, so that must have been something that maybe I decided to use before and then changed my mind and didn't use that selector. Maybe it's something that's used on another page. We're just going to eliminate it since we're not using it, so I'll get rid of that. Then I have the rule for the nav. Again, the nav is just setting the margin on the top to be something a little bit different, and we probably just want to verify that that is something that we need. You can see that here margin on the top is different. It's going from 8% to 6%, so yes, we need to have that. So I'll just consolidate these down, and you can see that I've eliminated quite a bit of what we had there before. So this is great. I've kind of finished doing all the media queries. If I save the page and we refresh it in the browser, we just want to verify that everything looks good. So our page does seem to look pretty good right here. One thing is that I want this to be a little bit wider, so I think that what I need to do is go back into my code. The margin I have on column B is not quite working the way I want. It's a little too big on the right, so let me just change this to 2.5% for the right. Then we'll leave it at 5% for the bottom, and let's change the left to 5%. I think I had those numbers backwards. If I save that and we come back and refresh right here, yeah, that looks better. I want this, the nav and the edge of that to line up, so I like that much better. All right, so that's our page. We have gone ahead and really cleaned this up. If I open up my original CSS file, you can see that I had about 220 lines of code. My new CSS file has 215, slightly less, but we put in a ton of comments, right? So actually our code is going to be much less if we had gotten rid of all the comments and all this stuff at the top. I mean, this right here is almost 50 lines of comments that we're using, plus all of these spacer comments. If we subtracted that from our overall size, you can see that we really reduced the code down. We shrunk everything down quite a bit. This file is set up to work better, and it's much easier for someone to work on and to edit from, since we really have cleaned it up and optimized it. So hopefully through some of these techniques you've learned some good ways that you can organize your CSS code. You've learned some additional things that you can do just to avoid redundancy, to make sure that you're using shorthand correctly, to make sure that you're naming CSS in the right ways, to make sure that you are laying out the CSS file in an organized fashion so it's easy to find things. You've specified typography and color guides so someone that's not familiar with the site can come right here and get that sort of information. And really, we're producing a better end product. What I'm going to show you next is ways that we can just speed up the code. So we'll talk about some techniques that we can do that in the next video.